Nothing defines the MAGA movement more than hypocrisy. This is a party that claims to back the blue until they pardon 1,500 January 6th rioters who attacked police officers. They claim to be pro-life until they cut your Medicaid and leave struggling families without health care. They claim to care about election fraud until they're the ones caught voting illegally. And now Mike Johnson is scrambling to cover up his own party's blatant law breaking. We're going to break it all down, but before we do, if you support independent coverage, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly makes a difference. Now, to understand just how deep this scandal goes, we need some context, and Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen lays it out perfectly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with my newborn Sam, who's just 4 weeks old. Unfortunately, I wasn't given the opportunity to vote remotely after giving birth, but I wasn't going to let that stop me from being here to represent my constituents and vote no on this disastrous Republican budget proposal. Republicans and Trump promised to lower costs on day one, and instead their priorities have been focused on ripping healthcare away from kids, seniors, moms, and others who need it most. And this is not going to save money. It includes people like my mom who work for hourly wages but are still unable to afford healthcare. When you don't have access to healthcare, you show up in the ER. This is going to have a huge burden on our hospitals and unfortunately will have skyrocketing costs. I agree, Sam. Hospitals will bear this burden. It also slashes SNAP, taking food off the plates for seniors, veterans, and kids, all to fund tax breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk while increasing our national deficit by trillions of dollars. How can anyone show their face in their district after voting yes for this?
MAGA hypocrisy is on full display in this story, and I'm excited to break it down, despite how disturbing Mike Johnson's actions are. It starts with this. The so-called pro-family party refuses to allow new mothers and fathers to spend even the first 12 weeks with their newborns. Such a basic, reasonable policy, and yet MAGA lawmakers oppose it. Meanwhile, Elon Musk won't stop ranting about declining birth rates, though he's doing his part to boost them with his own ever-expanding list of kids. But seriously, this hypocrisy is absurd. It gets even worse when you realize that this is a law they put in place, but now they don't actually want to enforce it. And Congressman Jim McGovern, someone we deeply respect on this show, lays it all out perfectly. Then we'll dive into how Mike Johnson is scrambling to silence the conversation.
A mandate is like you won by 20 or 30 or 40 seats. You guys lost seats in the last election. Republicans have the smallest majority in nearly 100 years. And so Republicans need every single vote to pass crummy partisan bills like this one. They can't afford to have any of their members miss a vote. And Mr. Speaker, when Democrats were in charge, when I was the chairman of the Rules Committee, we actually put in place proxy voting in response to a worldwide pandemic. Anyone could cast their vote remotely if they had an excused absence. Because it's 2025 and not 1725, and we actually can use technology to vote remotely. The backlash we got from Republicans on this was insane. You know, they went out to the press and they said that proxy voting was illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's this, it's that. And guess what? They did it themselves. Speaker Johnson voted remotely 39 times. Let me repeat that. Speaker Johnson voted remotely 39 times. And he voted remotely so he could go home early. He voted remotely so he could visit school kids. He voted remotely for an entire week once. He just didn't show up. Then, despite him voting remotely dozens of times previously, when Johnson became Speaker, he ended remote voting because he said it was, quote, unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Yet he voted remotely 39 times. So imagine my surprise, Mr. Speaker. Totally blew my mind this week when I see that Representative Byron Donalds somehow voted, and he wasn't even here in this building. Because last week, Congressman Byron Donalds was at HBO studios in California, not on the House floor. But somehow, news reports say he also voted here on the House floor at the same time. And this is so interesting, Mr. Speaker, because I have a tweet here from 2 years ago when Representative Donald says, and I quote, Today, House Republicans will vote to end proxy voting once and for all.
No surprise here, Byron Donalds remains one of the most shameless, dishonest hypocrites in the MAGA movement. The man who loudly claims to care about election integrity just broke the very law he pretends to uphold, voting by proxy while in LA. Wait, what? Isn't this exactly what Republicans accuse Democrats of doing? Seems like Byron is turning into the very corrupt Democrat that the GOP keeps warning us about. But here's the kicker. Mike Johnson isn't mad at Donalds. Oh no, he's furious at lawmakers who simply want the right to vote after having newborns. And that's exactly what we see in this article right here. Florida Republican Congresswoman Anna Aluna is accusing leaders from her own party of threatening and bribing other lawmakers to block her effort to allow proxy voting for new parents in the House of Representatives. I'm not gonna be bought. I will tell you that I've now been reached out to multiple times offering me positions on different committees, and I don't want it because this is bigger than me. Luna told reporters on Thursday it's actually about changing the institution for the better. Luna, 35, became the 12th lawmaker to give birth while serving in the House in 2023 and appealed to GOP leaders to adjust the rules so that new parents can cast votes remotely around the birth of a child. Both former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and current Speaker Mike Johnson rebuffed her. I'm a father, I'm pro-family. The Republican Party is pro-family. We want to make it easy as possible for young parents to be able to participate in the process. Johnson said earlier this week when asked by NPR about the push to change the rules. But proxy voting, in my view, is unconstitutional. Johnson's office declined to comment on allegations by Luna about bribes or perceived threats to other lawmakers. Luna is teaming up with the Colorado Democrat that we saw in this video, Brittany Pearson, who is the 13th lawmaker to deliver a baby while in office. They used a procedural tool called a discharge petition to gather support from a majority of House members, 218, to force a vote on their measure, which would allow new parents to vote by proxy for the first 12 weeks around the birth of a new child. They reached the threshold earlier this month, and under House rules, they can call it up for a vote on the floor as early as next week. Luna says GOP leaders and their allies are using a mix of threats and horse trading to try to get lawmakers to derail the vote. She says she was even offered a committee slot on a panel that she was initially rejected from earlier this year. Luna specified that the speaker was personally making any offers or threats, but said multiple people have reached out to her. Luna also reported that Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett, one of the 11 Republicans to sign the discharge petition, was offered a vote on 2 of his bills in return for opposing the proxy voting bill. Yeah, somebody said, well, if we get those bills on the floor, would you vote against Luna Burchett? Recounted to reporters Thursday. I was like, voting against pregnant women? Are you all crazy? Luna said. So-called liners, GOP lawmakers who represent swing districts have been threatened with the loss of fundraising help in their district for bill or signed the discharge petition would ultimately vote for it. Well, this is pure absurdity. It is absolutely ridiculous that this bill isn't passing. And let's be clear, this isn't some free-for-all remote voting scheme. Nobody is suggesting that lawmakers should just cast votes from a beach, sipping Mai Tais, logging in whenever they feel like it. No, this bill is about allowing new mothers and fathers to vote remotely around the birth of their child. Why should they be forced away from their newborns, a time when their child needs them the most? And yet, instead of supporting this basic humane policy, Mike Johnson is out here threatening Anna Paulina Luna, which is even more absurd when you realize that Byron Donalds literally broke the law doing the exact same thing. But guess what? No threats for Byron, no outrage, just targeted attacks on Luna. Now, I'm not saying I agree with her on much. She openly supports a fascist for president, but on this issue, she's actually making sense. And she makes that clear right here.
We've made the changes to ensure that it is in line with the Constitution by removing the quorum clause. It can be done, it will be done, and as you are seeing right here, these are all the times he voted by proxy. So I guess the question is now what? We are going to be bringing up the vote to the floor. There is massive bipartisan support, not just with the Democrats, but Republicans. We're collecting more signatures, and they actually had to cut off the petition at 218 because that's the max number that's allowed for the petition. So we're hoping that, again, they don't work against the entire conference. But remember, it's going to pass whether it's now or next Congress. The fact is that Democrats had vote by proxy without guardrails. We have guardrails in place specifically for new members. And then I would also argue that that argument in itself is pretty ridiculous, given that, again, He voted by proxy.
Mike Johnson. Yes, Mike Johnson himself has voted by proxy. Let that sink in. The hypocrisy here is absolutely off the charts. But honestly, are we even surprised? This is MAGA. Hypocrisy is their brand. They claim to be the populist party, the anti-corruption party. But when it comes down to it, they make the rules and break them whenever it suits them. And let's not forget, they're letting Elon Musk run wild, unchecked, with zero accountability. That's exactly what Congressman Greg Casar was calling out right here.
Casar, he is a member of the House Oversight Committee and Subcommittee on Delivering Government Efficiency and the Progressive Caucus Chair. Congressman, good to have you. So you have fiercely condemned Elon Musk's efforts to dismantle government programs and cut the benefits out there for Americans. And his foray into government is not your first exposure to Musk. Your Austin, Texas district includes his largest Tesla factory. So I'm curious your response to these protests, as well as the vandalism at Tesla dealerships across the country.
Well, look, we don't support vandalism, and there's no Democrats that support that kind of behavior. But what we do support is people expressing their First Amendment rights. And we all are deeply concerned. The richest man on earth is firing veterans, taking their salaries and trying to hand it out in the form of tax breaks to his billionaire buddies. Elon Musk is talking about how Social Security, in his words, is a, quote, Ponzi scheme, and he wants to eliminate billions of dollars from Social Security, deny seniors their benefits by calling them fraudsters, and channeling money to himself in the form of government contracts. So we need to be really clear with folks that what you're feeling right now is an unholy alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government. And the Democratic Party's message, their number one message, should be breaking that unholy alliance so that we have representative government again, and so that government can take care of the everyday person, not have an economy rigged for Elon Musk.
That's exactly it. Hypocrisy is baked into MAGA. It's not a bug, it's a feature. But that's why it's so important to call it out every single time. And that's exactly what we're doing here. If you want to support that, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around till the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.